Thank you for inviting me here to talk about Insight, the journey we've been on, journey we're continuing on. I think hopefully most of you have heard of Insight, even if you're not using it on a day-to-day basis. But I want to talk about how Insight's evolved from the proof of concept that we had in CP6 through to what we've got now and what we're planning to do in CP7. So Insight's a network rail developed tool. So we've been developing it in conjunction with you guys, obviously, through our working groups, through trial areas, and the objective is to make life easier. So we're trying to make it easier. We've talked a lot about all the technology that's coming in, all the data that's coming in. So its objective is to make life easier for you to process all that data, but also to help you make better decisions. So, to make the best possible decisions in how you what you need to do to fix faults and so on. The way it does this is we obviously ingest data from lots of different sources, from measurement trains, from asset databases and so on, from Ellipse. And we identify potential failures and then predict when it's going to be a problem. Then we provide visualizations and things that will help you make decisions about how to fix it. And then we want to get to the point that actually, if an incident does occur, then you've got information there to investigate why that happened, find other sites that match that, have the same contributing factors, and then potentially eliminate those. And then finally put in place mechanisms to prevent that from happening again. That's kind of the vision of where we want to get to. We're not there. We've got some of the pieces of the jigsaw in place, but we've obviously got other bits to put in place. Which is a deliberate segue into the next slide, where we've started off, and anyone who does jigsaws knows that you start with your corner pieces. Our corner piece was track geometry. So we started off by identifying, we take geometry data, we align the traces, run, so you can see how it degrades, and then we can use that to predict when we're going to have an exceedance. The visualizations, like, sorry, I should be on the next slide. Visualizations give you ideas of what's going on there, but what other faults are there. So you can get some efficiencies going out, fixing your L2, finding other L1s at the same location and fixing those at the same time. We've got rates of degradation, so you can actually see obviously how fast it's going off, but also how effective what you've done, all your treatments have been. So and there's been sort of talk about that during today. And then the final trick of the sleeves that we have for Insight is that we reduce the duplicate recordings of the same defect. So a defect might be recorded, you plan some work against it, going to carry that in a few months, it gets then recorded in the next run, and Insight will remember that, will remember the work order you've got planned against it, and it sort of saves you from having to do that analysis manually each time. So that's track geometry. Obviously, we also have cyclic top. So this is a new view. It's a new trace that is actually a network rail patent, or we've got a patent pending on this. And it's sort of starting to give you a view of where you've got cyclic top. It might not be a Cat D yet. It might not be something that's reported, but it's you can see from the traces that you've got a danger of cyclic top appearing there. And what Insight does is it monitors the degradation of each of those lollipops there to predict when you're actually going to have your speed restriction. So this is starting to give you that early sight of those things happening. And this is a particular example here. You can see it was a pre-alert, so it wouldn't even come up in Tiger. By the next train run, it's degraded, and now you've got a speed restriction, and you can actually start to see what's going on there. So as well as cyclic top, we've got PLPR. So we bring in our PLPR defects, so you get the advantage of better images. So we can blow them up to full screen. We've had lots of feedback that's really helpful. We present that against the geometry data, which is useful. You can start to see how that PLPR defect is having an effect on the performance of the track. And in this instance, that deduplication logic really comes into its own, because obviously you can have M6, M3s, things like that. You can get told about defects repeated times. Our analysis sort of has identified that about 70% of the defects reported off your 225s and 226s have been recorded on a previous run, so it's a real sort of reduction in effort. And the last bit that we've introduced within the defect management place is track quality. So within track quality, you get the same sort of thing. You get your super reds and your VPEs, but you also get those 8s that are predicted to go into those in the near future. We do a run-on-run equivalent, which is a CCQ chart, which you'll be familiar with, obviously, and we have the rates of degradation, so you can see the historic rates of degradation, but you can also see, looking at the wrong thing on here, you can also see the effectiveness of work that's been carried out on that 8th. As well as that, we've got a rolling SD, and we've got information on the faults that are within that 8. So actually you can target your improvement plans for your super reds and VPEs on the specific defects there, so you're getting to understand what work you'd need to carry out to fix that. Okay, so these are the sort of 4 main defect areas we've got within Insight at the moment, but the value comes in that we are actually bringing all those together into a single view. So you can actually, this is an example here where we're starting to identify the potential root cause of this cyclic top fault. So you can see there's a cluster of faults just up the track from it, which have a top. We've got twist there, and there's a PLPR voiding, and that's likely to be the trigger point for the cyclic top fault that we looked at. So you can actually start to see how bringing that data together really gives you some benefit. And it's not just track. So within Insight, I'm here to talk about track, obviously, but within Insight we have some of the signalling pages. So we've got some stuff on radar, on the points operating equipment, and the swing times and current draw, and we're starting then to bring in managing S&C of the system, so you can identify that your swing times might be impacted by your geometry, and Insight's now bringing those 2 bits of data together. So that's all of our that's all the managing defects, and obviously there's lots of opportunities to do other things. Rail management was mentioned earlier by Dave. We've got things like the CRTs and so on. So there's lots of opportunities to do stuff in the future as well. As well as the defects, or plugging into the defect stuff, we've got our RBM functionality, and that was mentioned earlier as well. With RBM, we can configure in here RBM thresholds. It doesn't have to be at the L1. It can be what you need it to be. And then you also configure your rules for when you've got your scoping inspections and your remedial action timescales. So what that means is when the train runs, it will pick out all the defects that are RBM defects based on your scopes, exclusions, track category, line speeds, and so on. It will apply these rules to it until you got to your scoping by this point. And then you select your failure modes, and it tells you what you've got to fix and by when. So all of that stuff is live now, and it's been in Insight for quite a while. But for a lot of people, Insight has represented a bit of duplication of effort between what you managing it in Insight, managing in systems like Tiger. So what we've in the process, literally at the moment of rolling out, is the Ellipse integration. That's a bit that everyone's been very keen to get. What that enables, what we do with that is, first of all, Insight will match the defects that we have in Insight, the geometry defects, with your Tiger defects. So you're talking about the same things. And then if you go and create a work order within Insight, it will obviously update in Tiger, it will update Insight. So the 2 stay in sync then. So you only need to manage it in one place, which you'll be pleased to hear about. When you go in Insight to create the work order, you obviously can create you create the work order, it pre-populates the information from the defect, from the standard jobs you selected, and then obviously you can create the work much like you can in Tiger. You've got the options as well to create defects for multiple create work orders for multiple defects, or even create multiple work orders for a single defect. We then have different options for how you might go about closing out your defects. There's different ways that you can get to your defect to close them out within Insight. So all aimed to make your life easier. But as well as the work orders, we also want to introduce some functionality that will help you to identify and complete renewals problem statements. So obviously you can use the information within Insight, some of the information I'm going to talk about in a second, to identify the need to do a renewal. You can't maintain it anymore. What we can then do is use that information, gather it together to form your case for your renewals. So it's actually starting to bring all that in together and help you make the best decisions. So that's now the ability to create interventions, but underpinning all of that is our compliance and risk assessment. So again, within the signaling side of the tool, we've got already some of the core of this functionality in place. It's looking at your backlog, looking at your outstanding work and identifying where you're going and helping you to manage those. But what I think would be particularly useful, and I know people are very keen on, is actually using that to identify missed train runs. So potentially identifying where the train hasn't run, using that to spot the black holes and grey holes, and then to do the risk assessments. So, obviously with PLPR it's a 229, but it's the same process for geometry as well. It's identifying what you need to do to mitigate for the missed runs. Okay, and then we have an underpinning. So a lot of those risk assessments require information, and that for us is in the form of this linear viewer and asset profile. And there's lots of use cases for this. When we look at the linear view, I mean, a lot of people have been asking for that. What we can do, it supports things like tracer views, so you can go in, you can see all those channels stacked up on top of each other for you doing your tracer views. But we also got lots of other information sources that we're bringing in. So you'll be able to see your cyclic top traces, your CCQ charts, as much like you can in LADs today. As well as that, obviously, you need to be able to do your annotations to form tracer views, so we've got the functionality to do that. And we pre-populate a lot of the information that you need to see, like your register dates, NRPs, defects, etc. From that, we've got the run and run chart, so you can switch those on, see the traces, run and run, and the rates of degradation, so you can select a point and just see how it's degrading over time. So that's all in development now, actually, and I can demo that to you in our development environments. And then we have the asset profile page. So within, again, this exists within Insight today. It's more geared towards point assets, so like your S&C. But what it does is it takes the information from Ellipse, presents it there, so you can see for that S&C all your MSTs, your work orders. You can see the asset hierarchy and how the assets relate to each other. And we've also pulled in the fault information from FMS. So again, and presents all that in a timeline view. So you've got information there that really will help you understand the asset, understand what's going on. So you can see how that linear view would underpin things like risk assessments. It would support you to identify root cause of defects when you want to create your work orders. But it's also would be particularly useful in being able to investigate incidents when they occur, maybe find sites that have the equivalent the problems. So we're introducing something called a query builder. I was working on this at the moment. What it will enable you to do is say, find any sites that meet certain criteria. So let's say I want to find all of my dips on the crossings, or something like over 10 millirads, or I want to find a gauge through an S&C. So you've got opportunities, and we've already started providing some of these reports to find anywhere in the site anywhere in the country where you get these conditions. And then we present that in the linear view. So you can say, right, this site matches those criteria, and then we can see what else is going on there. You can understand how it's impacting on different condition items and so on. So that's the query builder. And then in the top corner there, we're now looking at how we can start to use that information to help with what we're calling desktop scoping. This provides the ability to say interface, if you've got a defect and you need to plan your work, you need to understand what's going on, we can see that linear view. So we plug into that linear view, so you can say, well, what else is going on there, what kind of assets we've got. We've also looked at things like AVA, so where AVA can present itself within other applications, so we can pull through like your forward-facing imagery and some of the good stuff that Mark was talking about earlier from AVA. We can link into the geospatial data, so you look at the maps, look at the aerial imagery that's been collected. And then we're working on another concept, which is around understanding the effectiveness. So we put some kind of measure on the effectiveness of the interventions that have been carried out, how much it's improved things, how long that improvement's lasted for, which will actually support decisions on whether you need to choose a different treatment method. But then if you obviously can't do your scoping from your desktop, then you may still need to go outside, and this is where we need Insight to plug into mobile applications. And one of the things that I know a lot of you have suggested is that things like the VPE Super Red inspection tests, we should be pulling the information from Insight, because a lot of the TEF is already there in Insight, populating it into the TEF forms, and then when you go out to your inspections, you fill the rest of that in, and then it comes back into Insight, it comes back into your tracer views, it comes back against the defects. So you know all that information is then available when you need it. So that's kind of all the bits of the Insight jigsaw puzzle that we've put in place, or we're putting in place. But I've left the last bit for you guys to put in. So obviously, this, as I said at the beginning, this Network Rail tool developed for Network Rail. So we're looking for inputs all the time through the working groups, through even just contacting me to say, there's opportunity to do other things, there's things that we haven't considered, or like what's the priority of the stuff that we're doing. So obviously very keen to get your inputs and feedback on what we've got. And that's it. I think I brought us back on time, Rich.